Good morning. That's better. It's better. So it's very good to be with you here again today. One thing I noticed as I was standing there when they put the first slide up is I forgot to change the date. It's not April, it's November. Now, that actually leads to a very good point, because those of you that were here in April probably are going to recognize various portions of the presentation I'm going to do today. However, the information I'm going to give you and what I'm going to tell you is important is very different today than what I told you in April. And what I told you in April was very different than what I told you last year. That speaks to the speed at which everything is changing with regard to AI. And everything is changing with regard to why many of you are probably here today. Either you're interested in startup entrepreneuring, you're interested in AI, or you're already a startup entrepreneur and you want to come and learn more. But the speed at which everything is moving is incredible. I've never seen it before. So I'm going to give you my perspectives on this from my 30 years as a startup entrepreneur, as an investor, and as someone who spends a great deal of time teaching startup entrepreneurs through our acceleration programs. So, what are we going to talk about today? Just what I said. We're going to talk about startup entrepreneuring from my perspective and the perspectives of my partners, some of my partners that are here today as well. So you're thinking about becoming a startup entrepreneur. What does that mean? Well, probably what it means is you need to get your heads examined. But at any rate, it's an interesting life, I can tell you. But let's talk. So we're going to talk about that today. But let's talk first about who were the very first startup entrepreneurs and the very first investors. Interestingly enough, it goes back much farther than you probably know. You probably know this guy, Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus was probably one of the very first startup entrepreneurs. What did he do? He got on a ship with his buddies, and he started sailing west. He had no idea what he was going to run into when he sailed west. Well, that's the life of a startup entrepreneur. You just kind of jump off the edge of the cliff and you see where you're going to go. So he was really the very first startup entrepreneur. But who was the very first venture capitalist? Who was the very first investor? It was Queen Isabella of Spain. Queen Isabella funded his first venture. So she was really the first venture capitalist in the New World. But we learn a lot from what people have to say about what they're doing. So I'm going to give you a few startup entrepreneurs and a few quotes. So what did Christopher Columbus say? He said, by prevailing over all obstacles and distractions, one can unfailingly arrive at their chosen goal or destination. Now, isn't that what we're trying to do as startup entrepreneurs? We're trying to build businesses. We're trying to build businesses to go somewhere. We're trying to build businesses to go someplace where no one has probably ever gone before. And Christopher Columbus said that, I think, quite well in the quote that we chose for him. What did Queen Isabella say as an investor? I will assume the undertaking for my own crown of castle, and am ready to pawn my jewels and to defray the expenses of it, if the treasury should be found to be inadequate. That's an investor. And investors are they're not going to give you money. They're going to invest in your venture. They're going to invest in your venture because they believe in where you're going. They may not know where you're going, but they believe in where you're going. Just like Queen Isabella believed that in Columbus and his venture to the New World. Now, he didn't know he was going to find the New World. He thought he was going to find new trade routes to India to get spices. But he ran into the North and South America along the way, and it kind of stopped him. And he says, well, I think I'll stop here and see what's going on. And we're all here because of it. Who are some modern day entrepreneurs? Now, these are entrepreneurs that were chosen principally because they have activities today, deep activities today, in artificial intelligence. Jeff Bezos. We all know Jeff Bezos from Amazon. Jeff Bezos from Amazon Web Services and Amazon Shopping online and so forth. And one of the largest artificial intelligence companies in the world. What does he say? This failure and invention are inseparable twins. The journey you're starting on, you're going to fail. But it doesn't mean you're going to fail in a bad way. It means you're going to fail forward. So failure, we're going to talk a lot about failure today. Not that it's something that we want to dwell on, but we're going to talk about it because it's a fact of being an inventor, an entrepreneur, and an innovator. Sam Altman. Sam Altman, of course, was the co-founder of OpenAI. What does Sam say? Startups that don't first figure out a product some users love also seem to rarely develop the sense of mission that comes with the very best companies. So, you're going to build a company? Make sure somebody cares. Make sure you're solving a problem. Make sure you're solving a big problem if you want to build a strong, successful technology startup company. Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman now is a co-founder and a prominent AI investor. What does he say? And the whole investment scene has changed with AI. An entrepreneur is someone who jumps off a cliff and builds a plane on the way down. That's what you hear. That's what you've set off to do, is you're jumping off a cliff. And a lot of people will say, go, 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 and they'll wave at you as you're going over the cliff. But that's what you set up to do. Bill Gates, everybody knows who Bill Gates is. Success is a lousy teacher. It makes smart people think that they can't lose. So, success is a lousy teacher. We don't learn from our successes. We learn from our failures. We learn from our mistakes. Esther talked a little bit about that in the talk she just gave. Steve Jobs. You can't just ask customers what they want and then try to give it to them. By the time you get it built, they're going to want something else. Okay, that's so true. That's so true. You think about the hunter. I don't know how many, probably not many of you in here are hunters. But when a hunter shoots at a duck, does he shoot at the duck? No. He shoots ahead of the duck because he's going to put the shot where the duck is not going to be. Because if he shoots at the duck, by the time the shot gets there, the duck is already gone. So consequently, Steve Jobs, this is one of the things he did really, really well, and Apple still does really, really well, is Apple is not an innovator. They're truly not an innovative company. They're a fast follower. And so they learn from the innovations that other people are making and the mistakes they're making. And then they say, oh, now I understand where the market is going, and I'm going to build my product for this time in the future. And by the time my product is ready, the market should be ready. That's been the key secret to their success. Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk is an interesting and odd character, but he certainly has been a successful startup entrepreneur. So, what does he say? Some people don't like change, but they need to embrace the change if the alternative is disaster. We have to embrace AI. Because if we don't embrace AI, we're going to get left behind. So that's why I think it's great all of you are here today. Being an entrepreneur is like eating glass and staring into the abyss of death. Folks, that is what really building a startup feels like most of the time. And you need to be ready for the journey that you're either undertaking or about to undertake. So, startup entrepreneurs, what are defining characteristics? What do we like? What do we like as people? What makes us different? Entrepreneurs are visionary. Entrepreneurs are risk takers. They build the engine that drives society forward. Now, this is why I think what Rose is doing at Development Solutions Foundation and her team are doing is so super important. It's because they realize that entrepreneuring and investing and innovation are is the engine that drives economic development in the country. And so the fact that they're providing an opportunity to bring knowledge from the United States to Colombia as an economic development engine is super important. And that's the reason that we do what we do in Latin America, and it's the reason I'm very glad to be up here with my partners today. An example of that, greater than 26% of the jobs created by the private sector in the United States over the last 4 years have been built by startups. What's the definition of a startup? The definition of a startup is a company that wasn't in business 2 years ago. So consequently, greater than 26%, a quarter of the jobs in the United States are created by companies that didn't exist 2 years ago. Now, by contrast, conversely, let's look at that situation in Colombia today. Does anybody know what the percentage of jobs created in Colombia in the private sector were in the last 4 years by startups? Somewhere between 3 and 5%. So, what you're doing here today, and the fact that you're here to learn and to experience, is really important. Because the businesses that you create will hire people. And the people they hire are going to have new opportunities, economic opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. And you're going to be successful as startup entrepreneurs. And when you're successful, what are you going to do? You're going to hire more people, but you're going to stand up here on a stage one day, and you're going to help other aspiring entrepreneurs to build businesses as well, because you're going to share your knowledge. That is so important, and it drives economic development better than any, I'm sorry for being a little political here, better than any government does. Governments don't create value. The private sector creates value. Governments take value. They don't create value. So, but is it all about vision? Is that the only characteristic that we have as startup entrepreneurs? No. Here's some everyday skills that startup entrepreneurs need to master. You need to be good at this if you're going to build a business. You need to be good at this if you're a corporate entrepreneur. If you're building businesses inside a corporation, it's still the same. Just it's different in terms of how it's funded, and it's different in terms of risk profile, but the skills are still the same. So what are those skills? Understanding and embracing AI. That's number one. Now, in April when I presented, that was number 4 on this list. It's moved to number 1. It's just table stakes. You better understand AI. You better embrace AI. You better build a business that incorporates AI into it, because if you don't, you'll fail. Comfort with ambiguity. Comfort with the unknown. We're going to talk a lot more about that, and Esther talked about some of that in the questioning that she had in her last talk. But being really comfortable with ambiguity. Writing effective emails. Communication. Super important. Managing your time. There's never enough time. And there's always more to do than you have time, than you're able to do it. So choose what's important. Learn how to prioritize. Manage your time. Be good at research. Research is super important. Always learning, always understanding, always expanding your knowledge base. Maintaining and leveraging networks. Nobody does this alone. This is one of the things that I think we do quite well in the United States, is people are very anxious to help each other, even strangers. So you build a network, you manage that network, you nurture that network. The network is your true social capital, and you have to invest in that network in the same way you invest in your business. Continuous self-learning. Esther talked about she likes to read voraciously. So continuous self-learning, reading, constantly expanding your knowledge base, asking questions, being inquisitive, being curious. It's very, very important to being a successful entrepreneur. And public speaking. Don't be afraid to get up and do stuff like this. It's actually kind of fun, really. But you got to be good at public speaking, because you'll be speaking to investors, to strangers. You'll be speaking to customers. You'll be speaking to potential employees. You'll be doing it in groups. You'll be promoting your business. You'll be extending your network by doing things like this. So really be comfortable with public speaking. And last, being comfortable with saying, I don't know. That's the hardest thing for us to do as entrepreneurs, is to say, I don't know. Because everybody expects you to know everything. The point is, you show a much greater knowledge by saying, I don't really know, but I'll find out the answer to that question. than by trying to talk your way through a situation. So, startups are hard. I mean, they're like really hard. The hardest thing you've ever done in your life, I promise you. But why? Because it's evolutionary. We have a biological desire for instructions. As human beings, we're social animals. In fact, more so, we're pack animals. So we like to run in packs. It's built into our evolution. It's part of our survival instinct. It's part of our fight or flight instinct. So when you're building a business that's really, really hard, you're going against every instinct in your body that's saying, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. How do I do this? How do I do this? Well, as pack animals, what happens in a pack? We want to have a pack. The experienced animals in the pack teach the younger animals in the pack about how life is, how to hunt, how to stay safe, how to stay warm, how to stay out of the elements. They teach that. Those are instructions. So wired into our very DNA is the need for instructions. Instructions are everywhere in our lives. School, the teachers gave us instructions. We want to cook dinner. We go to a recipe book. It gives us instructions. It tells us how to do it. If we want to change the tire on a car, we go to YouTube. There's a video on YouTube. There's a video on YouTube in terms of how to fix a faucet. There's instructions everywhere in our lives. So they're all around us. And of course, now with ChatGPT and Perplexity and all these other tools, we can get instructions there as well. But startups don't come with instructions. Unfortunately, they're not included. So evolution drives us to this safety and security that we don't find in what we're choosing to do. So how do we embrace the unknown and need to constantly adapt for it? So what are you supposed to do? Well, first of all, stop looking for instructions. You're not going to find them. Start experimenting. Jump off that cliff. Start experimenting. See what happens. The worst that can happen is the experiment doesn't work. Okay, fine. I know that doesn't work. I'll try this. I'll try something different. Embrace mistakes. You're going to make them. Mistakes are how we learn. Trust me, I have many, many mistakes, and I think most of my colleagues here have many, many mistakes. Accept the chaos. It's a chaotic place to be. But the chaos is what makes it fun. It's what makes it interesting. It's what makes it exciting. Relish the journey. You're going to do things that most people wish that they knew how to do and had done on their own, and don't aren't ready to take that leap of faith in themselves. Now, failure. I know when I put this word up, particularly here in Latin America, it's like, ooh, failure. This is uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about failure. Well, the fact is, failure is something that you're going to deal with. You have to deal with it. It's important. So, there's lots of advice out there. And this is a part of the presentation that has changed quite dramatically since April, when we last did this. There's lots of books out there on failing fast. But it's not about failing fast. I mean, it's a catchy title. It sells books. Lots of people make a lot of money on talks on failing fast. It's not about failing fast. Failing fast is wrong. It's about pivot or perish. Because when we fail to plan, we plan to fail. It's about pivot or perish. In the world of AI, we're constantly pivoting. Why are we constantly pivoting? Because everything is changing constantly. What was true last week is not true this week, and what's true this week won't be true. Andrea's smiling. What won't be true a week from now, and certainly won't be true 6 months from now. So let's talk about failure in the age of AI. Stakes are a lot higher, much, much higher stakes. 90% of AI startups fail. That's a rate much higher than historic norms. Now, it doesn't mean they fail and go out of business. It means they fail at what they're choosing to do at that moment in time. Their model has failed, their database has failed, maybe their assumptions have failed. But it doesn't mean they've failed. It just means they've learned. They found out what doesn't work. And finding out what doesn't work is half the battle in finding out what will work. Oops, I'm sorry. We talked about there's whole new modes of failure. There's data rate failures. There's AI complexity issues, and underestimation of how complex this new world really is. Fast iteration. In fact, we talk about failure, learning. Fast iteration, public sharing are embraced. That means you share with people what you're doing. Now, this is something that early entrepreneurs often talk to me about is, I'm going to hide what I'm doing. I don't want anybody to know. If I tell him what I'm doing, then he'll copy me. No, that's not true at all. If I tell him what I'm doing, he's going to talk to me, and I'm going to learn from him about what he's doing. He can't do what I'm doing because my secret sauce is in my head, and it's based upon my experiences and our shared knowledge and so forth. But I'm going to learn from him, and he's going to learn from me. So public sharing is really important. And the shakeout in the market. The focus is shifting. So to substance over hype. What does that mean? That means that so many AI startups that have been built over the last 18 months to 2 years are hype. They're solving a problem that nobody really cares about, and they're solving a problem because they can, not because anybody needs it, number one. Number two is they're building their AI models, they're building their AI businesses on top of nothing but some prompts that they put into ChatGPT or one of the other LLMs. And those businesses are only one product release away from obscurity. As soon as ChatGPT introduces the next product release, those businesses don't work anymore. They're hype. So those are what we refer to as non-native AI companies. We're going to talk a little bit more about native versus non-native, but non-native AI companies. So what still holds true in the AI era? What hasn't changed? At least what hasn't changed so far? Product market fit. Product market fit is super important. This goes back to, are you solving a problem that somebody else cares about, that somebody else needs? Is it a big enough problem? Product market fit. Have you identified that? Cash in unit economics. Cash in the AI era is far more important than it was in the pre-AI era, because artificial intelligence can burn cash faster than you realize. Andrea and I were talking about this yesterday afternoon, is you start to build a business and all of a sudden you find yourself tied to one of the large language models. You're tied to that large language model, and once they have you hooked and once they have you locked into that large language model, you're locked in. It's very hard to change. So consequently, as you build more customers, as you need more processing power and more time and so forth to run your models, your costs go completely out of control. So cash and cash discipline is super important. Team quality, customer understanding, execution hasn't changed. Hasn't changed. When we invest in a company, the first thing we invest in is the team, because we know a good team will solve any problem. Timing, too early or too late. Timing is everything. You got to time it right. We have businesses that are sitting in boxes in the office because we were too early. We also have businesses that are sitting in boxes in the office because we were too late. So timing is super important. We talked about this before, real value versus hype. Truly solving a problem that people care about and has an economic component tied to it. Real value versus hype. But a lot has changed. So none of those things have changed. So prove value quickly, very, very quickly. AI moves fast. Again, what we talked about is what's true last week is not true next week, and certainly won't be true a month from now. So prove your value really quickly. Create defensible moats. What's a defensible moat? Defensible moat would be your models. Defensible moat would be your integrations, the things that you're doing that make it hard. So when I talk to him about my business, he's not going to understand the defensible moats I've created. He's going to understand my business and vice versa. I won't understand his defensible moats. New failure modes are all over the place. New failure modes are a failed database. New failure modes are a model that no longer works because the large language model you build it on has changed. So there's whole new ways to fail in the AI era that didn't exist in the pre-AI era. Plan pivots. We talked about pivots earlier. We talked about pivots as how you avoid failure or how you manage failure. Is pivot really quickly. Recognize when something is going to change and be quick to pivot. Now, pivot can be a little pivot, like, oh, I recognize that my model has changed a little bit, so I need to, or the model I'm based on is going to change a bit. I've pivoted to meet that. Or pivots can be, what I was trying to do wasn't working the way I expected it to work, so I'm going to pivot and do something a different way. But rapid pivots, you got to pivot quickly, not slowly. We always pivoted slowly before. Focus on capital efficiency. Again, we talked about that. Cash is king. And differentiate from the incumbents. How do you differentiate from the incumbents? You differentiate with your team. You differentiate with your speed. You differentiate with your models. So differentiation from your incumbents. And continuously improve your models. Continuously improve. You can't, in the AI era, you can't rest. You can't sit back and say, this is working really well. I'm going to sit back and cash out on this whole thing. It doesn't happen. You got to pivot really, really quickly because everything is changing so fast. So, beyond the hype, what is the difference between a native AI company and a traditional AI-enhanced startup? So, talk about this. AI integration. A native AI company has AI at the core. An enhanced AI startup is just an add-on or enhancement to something that we're already doing. So, AI at the core. Market-driven. An AI native company is driven as the market. The market is the primary driver. A traditional company, founders are the tech or founders are the traditional drivers. Automation and efficiency is, and we're going to talk about this in a couple slides from now, is AI native companies. They're small. They don't have big teams. They don't have big development departments. They don't have big sales departments. They use AI to drive their businesses. So we talk about capital efficiency. While there's ways for in an AI world for capital to get burned very quickly, there's also ways in the AI world to save capital, to preserve capital. And you do this by embracing and using AI as part of your business. Traditional business, large team. Continuous improvement. Models learn, all the models learn over time. You need to be learning over time and changing to match the speed with the velocity at which your underlying technology is evolving as well. Product evolution, it's continuous. It's driven by data. Now I'm going to pause on that for 1 second because it made me think of something. And that is that a traditional moat for non-AI companies has been their customer base, their size, those kinds of things. And so you think about a SaaS company. SaaS companies are usually they're driven by how many eyeballs they have using, how many users they have using, how many seats they've sold, and so forth. The value in AI companies, that comes, but the value in AI company is often the data that you collect as you go forward. And you're building data, and you're building a unique data set. And that unique data set has value because you can do things that other people can't do because of your unique data set. So the data is often the source of your value versus the traditional sources of value, customers. And defensibility. We talked about defensibility in the moat. I don't need to go over that again. Now, what are some of the tools that are at least some of the tools that we see our portfolio companies using to build their businesses. And for what? To actually implement these smaller teams. So I picked this source of tools because these are tools that our companies are using. But I come back next week, 2 weeks from now, there'll be different names on that list. And I'm sure all of you have other tools that you have used. But you say they've embraced AI. They're using these tools for marketing. They're using these tools for research. They're using these tools to manage their time. We talked about time management being a really important skill that entrepreneurs have. They're using these tools to manage their customers. So, tools. This is an example of using the AI tools to make your businesses more efficient. So I'm going to pause for a brief commercial message. Andrea, Esther, I are all part of a firm in Boston called Scale Up Labs. Scale Up Labs does 3 things. We build new businesses ourselves in our venture studio. We invest in startup businesses and portfolio companies, and we accelerate, meaning we provide knowledge and experience to highly promising technology companies, startup technology companies from Latin America and from Europe. So, to that point, we've created what we call a bidirectional entrepreneurial superhighway. It connects the tech startup communities of Spanish-speaking Latin America with the United States, and it connects the tech startup communities of Europe with the United States. We do this for 2 reasons. One's an economic reason. The economic reason is that we have found that Latin America and Europe are underserved investment markets. And so therefore, there's an opportunity to provide that investment, which provides economic gains for us. 2, we talked a bit about Development Solutions Foundation. We believe every business needs a social mission as well. So we create economic development because you're going to be successful with your startups and you're going to come back and hire more people, and all boats rise with the tide. We serve three communities. The first community we serve is the international early stage technology companies. We accelerate those. That business needs investment capital, it needs market access. We serve the corporate communities, and we manage all 3 of these as communities. We advise the corporate community. The corporate community is saying, we don't know what to do with artificial intelligence. We put hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars into it, and we're not getting any return. They don't know what to do. They're flat-footed. So we advise those communities. They need that knowledge. They need breakthrough innovation, and they need new lines of business. But they don't talk. They don't talk to the startup communities. And we advise and we invest in the businesses that we build or the businesses that we accelerate and invest in. And we maintain a network that we call the Scale Up Labs Venture Partner Network of capital communities there. They need businesses to invest in. And the opportunity zone is right there in the center where those 3 communities come together, and we act as the connector that connects all 3 of them. That's the foundation of our business strategy. So we're located in Boston. That is right outside our office. In fact, the building right behind there is where our office is located. But if I walk out the front door of the office and I throw a baseball this direction, I can hit Microsoft's AI World Headquarters. I throw one that direction, I hit Google's AI World Headquarters, and I throw it just a little bit farther behind Google, and that's Amazon's AI World Headquarters. And right across the street is MIT. So this is where we bring our knowledge and so forth comes from. What are some of the most important lessons? I'm getting the speed up message. What are the most important lessons that I've learned as a startup entrepreneur and investor in doing this for 30 years? Start a business, not a startup. Businesses are a path to profits. If you're not working on a path towards profitability, you've got a hobby, not a business. The initial funding is going to come from you. Now, this is really, really uncomfortable to most people. You're going to have to reach into your pocket and find the capital, find the money to start your business, and prove your business. Because you've got to prove your business before other people are going to invest their money in you. It's very, very rare that they're going to invest in something that doesn't exist yet. So that initial funding is going to have to come from you or your friends or your family or your co-founders. It's not going to come from the private capital markets. Ignore the real world. The real people in the real world are going to tell you, oh, that's stupid. Oh, that'll never work. That'll never happen. Well, the fact of the matter is, they're not startup entrepreneurs. You are. You're building your business. Believe in yourself. Ignore the real world. People will tell you a million reasons why things won't work, and they'll tell you no reasons why they will. So ignore the real world. They're just going to confuse you. Two most important questions you can ask yourself. And they're simple questions. They're simple questions. There's only 4 words in the 2 questions, but they're the hardest questions that a startup entrepreneur can ask. Those 2 questions are, so what, who cares? So what, who cares? You've got to be able to look yourself in the mirror in the morning and ask yourself, I'm building this business. So what? Who cares? And to answer those questions honestly, you may have to admit that your baby is ugly. Nobody wants to think their baby is ugly. But solving those questions, answering those questions, are really the 2 most important questions you can ask yourself. So you make sure you're solving a problem that people care about. Not just you and your co-founders. This one question, however, will tell you if your startup is going to fail. It's a different question. But it's going to tell you if your startup is going to fail or succeed. Why hasn't somebody else already done this? One of the things that makes me crazy when I'm working with first-time startup entrepreneurs is I'll ask the question, so who are your competitors? We don't have any competitors. What do you mean you don't have any competitors? Oh, we're the only ones that are doing this. Of all the billions of people in the world, nobody else has had this idea before. Well, that's probably not true. There's a lot of really smart people in the world. But if it's true, you have to ask yourself, why hasn't somebody else had the idea before? And if you ask yourself that question, you're probably going to find out that somebody else has had that idea, and they tried it. And they may still be trying it, or they may have failed. But if nobody else has really done it before, you really need to worry. You really need to worry because you're probably doing something that the world doesn't care about. So, but if you answer it and you find out that somebody else has, then go research them. Remember we talked about research being really important? Go research them. Find out how they did. Find out how they're doing. If it didn't work, why didn't it work? Were they too early? Did they execute it wrong? Were they too late? Why didn't it work? But that one question will tell you if your startup is going to succeed or fail. Ask dumb questions. Now, Esther talked about asking questions. Questions are really important to learning. Entrepreneurs are really good at asking dumb questions because they're comfortable with not knowing things. But entrepreneurs are genuinely curious by nature. If you look at any successful entrepreneur, she or he is always saying, why? How? Tell me more. Explain that to me. I don't understand. And they'll ask questions. And they'll ask, and by asking questions, this is how we learn. Really good entrepreneurs are curious people that ask questions. Embrace risk. Now, what's the difference between a corporation and a startup? Corporations have something to lose. So consequently, they manage risk. They do everything they can to manage risk to the point where it's not even risk anymore. And then they say, why can't I innovate? Why can't I make a significant profit, a significant return on the investments I'm making? Well, because you de-risk them to the point where there's no risk left, and therefore there's not going to be, there's nothing there. You got to have risk to have gain. Whereas entrepreneurs is what creates the opportunity for us. As entrepreneurs, we embrace risk. We don't manage risk. This is why our talking to the corporate community in our Venn diagram bubble is so important. Because they're too busy managing risk, and we're talking to the community out here that's embracing risk. So they can access that risk profile without having to take the risk themselves. And that's where they often become great acquirers of the companies that we have invested in or that we have built or nurtured. It's because we've de-risked the problem for them so they can bring it into their corporate environment. Failure is inevitable, but it's not a rite of passage. Learn from your successes and not your failures. Failures are usually better teachers than successes. We've talked about that before in here. So evolution doesn't, think about Mother Nature. Mother Nature fails all the time. If you look back in history, if you look back in evolution, Mother Nature has tried many experiments that didn't work. Does she stop? No. She just goes on and changes. She changes, okay, that didn't work. I'll try this. This is how we've evolved to what we are from Neanderthals. So, failure isn't fatal if you don't quit. It's only fatal if you quit. Live it or leave it. Live it or leave it. Super important. If you're going to build a new company, you better make it part of your life because you stand for something. You're part of it. You better live it. It better be in your blood. It better be the thing that gets you up in the morning and keeps you up until midnight at night. Live it or leave it. But no time is no excuse. Building a company, there's always way more things to do than you can possibly do. That's not an excuse. Time management is always there if you manage your time properly. So that means you got to learn how to prioritize. Planning is guessing. Versus, I'm going to build a plan. I'm going to sit at my computer and I'm going to write this business plan, and this business plan is going to be great, and people are going to love it, and people are going to give me money, and I'm going to be successful, and all these great things are going to happen. Planning is guessing, because plans let what you know in the past drive your future. It's not about what you know in the past. It's about where you're going. So the best information that you get is from doing something. So just get out and start doing it. And you'll learn from what's working and what's not working, and that will drive your planning. Not sitting at your computer for 6 months and trying to say, I'm going to build the best startup in the world. Find a happy band of volunteers. Nobody does this alone. Find people that believe in you. Most of our successful portfolio companies and the companies we have ourselves, we find volunteers to come in and say, I believe in this mission. I want to put my time and my energy and my knowledge and my experience and my networks into this whole thing, with the promise that maybe someday in the future, it'll be successful and there'll be an opportunity here for me. They're creating opportunities themselves. Volunteers are super important. I know that's not common in Latin America. It's very common in the United States, and it needs to become common in Latin America. Get a life. So you're going to work all the time. Don't forget you have a family. Don't forget you may have children. You may have a partner. Don't forget that. Get a life. The point is, and partner, spouse, really, really important things, is if you're going to build a startup and you have a partner or a spouse, make sure that that partner or a spouse is bought into it. Because if they're not bought into it, then you're going to be working hard all day and come home at night, and you're going to have that friction and that conflict. So make sure that your partner or spouse is bought into what you're doing. Pick a fight. Fights are good. Competition is really great because you have to have an enemy. So pick a fight. Go off and pick a fight. Sales is not a department. Accounting is a department. But in a startup, everybody's in sales. Your CFO is for sales. You're in sales as a CEO. Your tech development people are in sales. Your marketing people are in sales. And your sales people are in sales. It's always all about selling constantly all the time. So it's not a department, it's an action. If you're not growing, you're shrinking. Always about finding new opportunities, growth. It's growth that drives a business forward, not the profitability of a business. So U.S. investors are looking for the growth trajectory of the business, not a profit trajectory of the business. When I say that Latin America and Europe are underserved markets, it's because of a different philosophy in investing. In Latin America, investors are traditionally looking for cash flows. They're looking for EBITDA in accounting terms. In the United States, investors are looking for a growth trajectory, looking for where that company is going to get to 2, 3, 4, 5 years in the future, because that's going to create value in the business, and so they're investing to participate in that value in a liquidity event. So growth is the primary driver of your business, not profitability. Listen to the no's, not the why's. The no's that you're going to get are way more important than the yeses, or here in Latin America, the maybes. They're way more important. So startup success doesn't come from building a product or solution. It comes from finding the ways that you're wrong faster than everybody else does. So consequently, listen to the no's. And when you get a no, then you ask yourself the question, why did I get that no? What wasn't the way I thought it was going to be that they said no? You'll learn more from the no's than you do from the yeses. And a final thought, always remember, you're the artist. You're not the artist, I'm sorry. You're the art. You're the art as an entrepreneur. So, with that, I say muchas gracias, happy American Thanksgiving, and good luck to all of you.